Solitude is the pleasant and fulfilling feeling that you get when you are alone. Isolation, on the other hand, is a negative feeling that comes from feeling like you are cut off from your surrounding community. Many academics and students suffer from isolation and loneliness. So if you're feeling alone, you ironically aren't. As many as 40% of academics have cited isolation as the biggest contributing factor to their mental health. It's important to recognize the type of loneliness you are suffering from if you're feeling a little bit isolated. Emotional loneliness is the absence of intimate relationships and can lead to feelings of anxiety or frequently seeking others to provide companionship. Whereas social isolation occurs when individuals cannot identify their social networks, like a friendship group or a group where common interests are shared. Social isolation is common amongst masters and PhD students, especially amongst those who work on very specialized research topics where there's not a big community of researchers in their particular geographical area who may be working on the same types of topics. In this video, I'll present some strategies that you can use to help you deal with the loneliness that you may experience during your studies, especially during the research process. Some of these are tips provided by some of my colleagues, some of these I got from research and popular press articles, and some of these are just strategies that worked for me. The first thing is that it's okay to talk to people about your research, even people who aren't experts on it. It's a big part of your life, and if you are at the beginning, you might be especially excited about it. It's the same way people talk about their work. It's where they spend most of their time. But there's an additional benefit speaking to especially non-experts about your research, and that is that you can find parts of your research that is broadly applicable to broader society, and you can also make it accessible. You ultimately want to generate interest in your research and also want to feel like you are not studying some obscure concept that is of little value to everyday society. The more connections you can find between your research and what happens to you every single day or to other people, the less lonely you might feel working on it. And this will also make you a better researcher and scientist, whether you are a natural scientist or a social scientist. Another useful tool is, surprise, surprise, social media. Studies have shown that this is a very useful tool to use, especially for students who suffer from social anxiety. This is a nice place to connect with people who are far from you. And even if someone is close to you geographically, it's a useful place to make an initial connection or initial contact, which could later develop into valuable professional networks and even friendships. Another reason to use social media is that it is simply a good resource. You can also find answers to questions about things that you may be working on. LinkedIn and Twitter are especially useful places for this, but some academic communities also find spaces on Facebook to connect. Some of the networks that I find useful on Twitter is #AcademicTwitter and then also #AcademicChatter, where people can actually ask questions anonymously and others can then provide their opinions to these questions. As an economist, I also find #EconTwitter useful, and then I bookmark those tweets that I think are useful and that I might refer to at a later stage. At a more practical level, it helps to just change your scenery for a bit. So you could straddle between the office, writing at home, and then maybe also finding a coffee shop with good Wi-Fi where you could become a regular. Also look out for writing retreats. These are usually aimed at academics and research students who maybe just want to get away for a few days to a remote location with beautiful scenery where they can do some writing. You'll be surprised what a bit of scenery can do for the soul and the writing process. Also try to attend conferences and try to do so in person. Conferences are a great way to yes, travel, but also to meet other people in your field. Here you could also meet students who are working on the same types of topics that you are working on, and who may be struggling with the same thing that you are struggling with. So you can find a sense of community at academic conferences. Once you are in contact with a bit of a community, this could also be a great way to establish writing groups. Some people even do this with online platforms like Zoom, where people literally just start the meeting and everyone just writes their own piece of work that they're working on. Alternatively, if you are located close to one another, you can actually sit in the same room and write together. But in closing, remember that writing is an inherently lonely process. Two people cannot write a sentence at the same time. So if it gets too tough for you, visualize yourself walking across that graduation stage and balance that lonely time with some networking inside and outside your academic community.